Good day. I'm Peter Coffey, Vice President of Strategic Research at Salesforce, and it's my privilege to offer what we hope will be appetizers for this year's Forum Conference. We've challenged ourselves this year with a conference theme of embracing volatility in technology, talent, and planet. That's a wide range of subject matter, extending from what's in one person's mind at a moment of inspiration to what's negotiated by huge numbers of stakeholders over a period of years or decades. We'd like to offer three prequels, this being the first, to set the table and, we hope, whet the appetite for that multi-course meal of ideas and action opportunities. This first of three prequels will look at the topic of talent. You might think that I'll be showing slides with numbers and trend lines, and I could do that. Colleges are talking today about an enrollment cliff that's inevitably coming in 2025 as the baby bust of the global financial crisis, when people postpone starting or growing their families, becomes a decline in the number of 18-year-old college candidates, with that number projected to fall by 15% during a 4-year span. This slowing of the flow in our traditional pipeline for new talent is no small concern. It means we need to look at new ways of upskilling and retaining mid-career and late-career talent. People have been regarded for too long as either too expensive or too outdated in their skills and being candidates for layoffs or retirement incentives instead of being seen as investment opportunities for companies. This is no small thing, but that's all I'm going to say about demographics, because that's just seeing what's true and doing the math. What I'd like to do with the rest of this brief time is look at bigger questions of what talent is, where it is born, how it grows, and how it is most effectively applied to meet human needs that include challenges of planetary scale that stretch over the next several decades. In all the years that we've been convening the forum, we've always been able to treat talent as a resource to be engaged and as a community to be grown. This year, in quite a remarkable way, we have a sudden and genuine need to re-examine talent as a product of technology in the form of generative AI developments that have created a population of over 100 million users, for just one example, ChatGPT, far more rapidly than any single application has ever achieved before. This turns questions from popular futurist culture and science fiction into immediate real-world challenges. In particular, two pieces of pop culture come to mind when I think about what I owe to my own adult children or my two elementary school-age grandchildren. The first, if I can call Alvin Toffler pop culture, is something from his book Future Shock that was written back in 1971. He talked about the organization of the classroom. One adult and a certain number of subordinate young people, usually seated in fixed rows facing front. He called this the standardized basic unit of the industrial era school. When we look at this, as if we've never seen it before, we can see what this model provides. It's conditioning future factory workers or future office workers to show up on time, sit where they're told, do what they're told, and go home when the bell rings. It's an industrial era invention to have most children get this indoctrination, and I use that word quite deliberately. The earliest descriptions of this kind of classroom experience only date back to the early 1800s, and there's considerable controversy about what's the actual history and what's been exaggerated or invented by advocates of something different. But I don't believe anyone would argue that walking through any elementary school or any high school or even most university campuses would not feel like a visit to a factory producing 20th century employees, rather than generating 21st century innovators and collaborators. The second, much more recent item of pop culture that comes to mind is the pilot episode of a TV series, Humans, that made its debut in 2015. It's what I consider the best kind of science fiction in which only one variable gets changed, and we imagine the impact it would have on people's lives. The change in this case being that viable, autonomous, human-like robots called synths have become a part of everyday life. In that episode, during a conversation with their daughter, a teenage girl's parents are telling her that she has an amazing brain and could be anything she wants. She says, yeah, I could be anything I want. The world's my oyster. If I just trained for 7 years, I could be a doctor. When a basic bog cleaner synth could be doing heart surgery after a 5-minute software upgrade. 8 years later, it seems as if we might be getting close to people having that kind of conversation about the educational plans and the future career opportunities of people who are teens or preteens today. Between things like ChatGPT for doing stuff that only needs to sound good and things like Wolfram Alpha for stuff that actually has to be right, I can readily identify a lot of things that I spent arduous semesters learning to do. That freely available software, let alone the premium stuff that you pay to use, can already do more quickly. If I'm going to argue that talent is not produced in classrooms that look like factory worker factories, or if I'm going to say to a seventh grader that a meaningful job will be available in return for years of hard work, and I mean a lifetime of continuing education, not just K through 12 and a 4-year degree, then maybe I'd better be able to describe what talent looks like. I saw it last week when my 7-year-old grandson found a piece of hardware with some LEDs and some batteries and a push-button switch and a drawer in a workroom in his home, and he decided to make it work when he pushed the button and nothing happened. He found a miniature screwdriver to get it open, got out a voltmeter and confirmed that the batteries were dead, found some batteries that seemed to fit, discovered that he could not get the case to screw back together, found some similar but slightly thinner button-type batteries and confirmed their voltage, put the whole thing back together, and had a working flashlight. This was not a lesson being taught, not an assignment being completed, not a kit being assembled. This was someone discovering a situation and exploring what was available to make it better. This doesn't come from nothing. There were some basic skills and some underlying knowledge involved, like when a screwdriver is relevant and what a voltmeter is for. But there's something happening in the wetware in our heads that I don't think we have any idea how to express in software. And we may never know about seeing a situation and thinking, that could be better. I wonder how we could make that so. I heard another story just today about what talent looks like in a group rather than an individual. At Procter & Gamble, everyone knew back around 2000 that the Crest brand was a name for toothpaste and maybe toothbrushes, which isn't a big leap. The brushes are used to apply the toothpaste. But during the past 2 decades, P&G has broadened that brand into a larger scope of at-home oral care, and specifically, they came up with Crest White Strips. They transformed cosmetic whitening from a dental office procedure costing hundreds of dollars into something people could do for a tenth of that cost. What's not obvious if you don't work for the company is that White Strips were a fusion of P&G expertise in bleaching chemistry, food wrap film technology, and channel expertise in delivering a product that dentists would recommend to their patients, along with a premium version that would create new business for the dentists themselves. This is a great example of results that only happen when people talk over the walls and across the silos of a company. When a company is able to realize what it knows and transcend merely improving what it already does. I saw another example of unconventional thinking a few years ago at MIT when aeronautical engineering students were challenged to use a specified set of materials to produce an aircraft for a competition that would be scored on a combination of distance, time in the air, and payload carried. One of the student teams realized that given the scoring formula, they could use the material that was supposed to cover the wings of an aircraft to build a blimp that would stay aloft until the judges got tired and wanted to go home. This was totally not what was expected. They hedged their bets by also building something with wings that could compete on more conventional criteria. But I love to think of the expressions on the judges and the other teams' faces when the blimp gang inflated their gas bag. Competence does the expected, correctly. Talent does what no one saw coming until it was in the room. And this is not just a rich world story about what happens at a short list of elite institutions. I have a picture here of an all-girl team of students in Afghanistan who devised a mechanical ventilator for use by COVID-19 patients. And we're the first of a few dozen teams around the world who are attempting this, to use things like windshield wiper motors and other ordinary car parts from used Toyotas to build something for about $500 that more typically costs about $50,000. Talent shows up and gets stuff done. I'm a big fan. So where we are today is at the intersection of these 3 stories and what they say about what we need. We need to equip the next generation of talent with enough of the fundamentals, knowing how to recognize what tools are needed and apply basic skills. And this is not trivial. Computer science professors have been sharing with each other their surprise and concern that students arrive in their classes today without basic understanding of things like file systems, because modern devices abstract these things so completely that students literally don't understand a question like, where did you save your file? We also need to nurture an inclination to spend time with people outside a named field of study, not merely talking to the fellow students or the coworkers on the same branch of the organization chart, when we're doing more than solve a problem, when we're creating a new domain of solution. And we need to think hard about the definition of success and be sure we're incentivizing innovation and not rewarding incremental improvement. These are not just challenges for academia. These are demands on those who manage workers and craft corporate cultures as well. As I mentioned at the beginning, this is the first of 3 prequels that we'll be offering before this year's forum. Next week, we'll look at the seasons of AI and what's been successful or disappointing in previous seasons and what that means for what's to come. The week after that, we'll explore transforming ESG improvements into a positive side effect of innovation, profitability, and other positive goals, rather than having environmental, social, and governance standards be seen as getting in the way of other measures of success. These things are totally dependent, though, on a talent pool that's ready to take advantage of an accelerating pace and a broadening scope of new resources and new techniques for accelerating into a future that's clearly already happening. Thanks for joining us on the journey. For the Philadelphia Alliance for Capital and Technologies, I'm Peter Coffey, and it's my privilege to be part of your 2023 edition of Forum.